Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what chaos we've seen over the last month. And of course, it was at the time of the HGV lorry driver sort of crisis. And of course, that led to supply issues, that led to people sort of panic buying. And then, of course, filling stations at many across the UK had real shortages. So, yes, it's no surprise that that has pushed the price of petrol up and the price of diesel. Prices haven't been so high since 2012, when it was £1.42 a litre for petrol. Now, the Petrol Retailers Association say it's global oil prices rather than a supply issue that is pushing up prices at the pump. And if we look at a barrel of crude oil, that has in fact doubled over the last year. But it's important to stress this isn't a unique situation to the UK at the moment. This is an issue that's happening across the whole of Europe. And in fact, in France on Thursday, the Prime Minister has announced sort of extra funds for people on low incomes, the equivalent of £84 to help them with the price of fuel. So it's a situation that is happening across the whole of Europe. But I think when we look at it in the context of also rising energy prices, national insurance going up next year, I think there's going to be a lot of families feeling the pinch this winter.
Car dependency and how more of us are using our cars than at any other time in the last 15 years. How does that all tie in then with the impact of these fuel prices as you're describing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really important to stress that the majority of people commute by car. And what's really interesting is even obviously in the pandemic, there were people working from home and things like that. So you'd think in some ways people are sort of less reliant on cars. But in fact, it's actually at the opposite. And people's reliance on cars is at a 15-year high. About 84% of people who were surveyed by the RASC said that they would struggle without access to a car. And what's also really interesting is that there's a sort of hardening of attitude towards our public transport, with the majority of motorists saying that even if services improved in their area, they wouldn't be more sort of keen to take the train or something like that. So I think we've become quite reliant on our cars. I do wonder if it's a factor, as we're sort of coming out of lockdown, that people maybe don't feel so comfortable getting the train, getting on the tube, maybe if they've got concerns about people mask wearing. So it's interesting to see people more reliant on cars. But when we look at rising fuel prices, it's a concern that it could really hit motorists.
And from Monday, big changes if you want to drive a car in London with the expansion of this ultra-low emission zone, which, for those who don't know London very well, just explain for us how big an area this is going to cover.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the moment, the ultra-low emission zone is really right in the centre of London, and you really wouldn't have to it wouldn't concern you too much if you were sort of coming in and around London. But it's going to be expanded to basically be sort of the whole of the main London area, covering the North and South Circular Road. And the reason this scheme has been put in place by Mayor for London, Sadiq Khan, is because of concerns about pollution in the capital. And it is worth saying that 2 million Londoners live in areas with illegal limits on pollution. So that's why he's doing this. The concern is that really, if you have a car that is deemed to be less sort of not so good for the environment, that doesn't pass the criteria for the ULEZ, you will have to pay £12.50 a day, almost the entire year round, apart from Christmas Day, to bring it into London. And obviously this is a sort of deterrent to stop people bringing cars in that are seen to be less good for the environment. There have, of course, caused a number of concerns for people who maybe have to work. There are scrappage schemes that are in place, I should add, but they are only really available to people who are on disability benefits or some sort of benefits in that way. So there are schemes available, but of course, if you're sort of a working family and you've got a car, perhaps a diesel car that you bought maybe 5-6 years ago that you thought was, the greatest thing for the environment, this really could catch you out. And I was speaking to Dean Carter, who's a chauffeur, and he was telling me about what the ULEZ expansion will mean to him.
We bought a family car outside of, the work car to use. When we bought it 4 years ago, we was under the illusion that diesel was the right car to get, get away from the petrols. Do you want diesel? Now we paid out a lot of money for a car. We're getting told diesel's not the right car to have. Living so close to the North Circular, if I want to go to B&Q to pick anything up, it is 50 yards inside the zone, just off the North Circular. So for me to go and pick up something for like maybe 20 quid or whatever you need to get, I've got to spend £12.50 just to get there.
So, Lucy, we've got the ultra-low emissions... Sorry, go on, yeah. We've got Dean Carter there talking about all of
I was
that.
just saying-
And I suppose to throw into the mix with all of this is the fact we've got COP26 on the horizon, and here we are more dependent on our cars than ever, and it will seem as though this is a real issue that the government will want to tackle.
I know, absolutely. I mean, it will also, with the budget next Wednesday, we can. It's very likely that sort of how the green sort of energy sort of agenda is going to be a real sort of focus of it there. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be looking to. But as you say, this is the reliance. This sort of new data showing how more reliant than ever we are on our cars. The timing of it with COP26, as you say, is going to be quite problematic for the government. So it'll be interesting to see, particularly what's going to be coming out on the budget on Wednesday.